Hello, everyone. Welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon, and I have some unbelievable guests tonight. We're going to speak about the Murdaugh case in South Carolina, which has more twists and turns than you can possibly believe. Well, we have some experts with us tonight. To my right in the upper right window is retired NYPD Sergeant Lou LaPietra, who is also an attorney, LaPietra and Krieger. Welcome to the show, Lou.
Good to see you, Bill.
It's gonna be a wild ride. Below me is straight out of Brooklyn, Detective Phil Grimaldi, another retired NYPD detective. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill, and I'm very excited to dig into this case tonight.
Oh my God! And to the lower right, we have the beautiful retired Chief of Staff of the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, Barbara Butcher. So we're going to take a deep dive into this case. But first, if you like this show, Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories, please go on our YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell. We also have a Patreon. We have some paid memberships, and I won't go deeply into this. And we just started a YouTube memberships, which we already have 33 members. For $2.99 a month, you're the bucket. For $9.99 a month, you can polish my rack. For $24.99 a month, you're dipped in butter. And for $49.99 a month, it's heated dipped in butter. And we actually have one person that paid for that, but that's great. So, folks, just also, I want to reach out, thank Duty Ron. Duty Ron was supposed to go live at the same time tonight. He so graciously moved his show to 10 o'clock. So you folks that are watching the show, please go and watch Duty Ron after this. I really appreciate that. This case is just unbelievable. And before we get into the case, I'm going to play a quick video, and we're going to share it on the screen, and you sort of get an idea of what's going on with this case. And it really is an unbelievably sort of convoluted case, but we'll play it right now.
A tale that has a lot more twists and turns. Tell me what you know about this case.
Yeah, well, last Monday night on the family property in Colleton County, both Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were shot to death on the family property. Now, Father Alex, he was not at home at the time of the shooting. He came home around 10 o'clock, discovered the bodies of both his son and his wife. He called the police. At that time, the Colleton County Sheriff's Office came out. Also, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, they were on scene of this investigation as well. Colleton County Sheriff's Office would turn that investigation over, obviously, a conflict of interest. Alex Murdaugh working as a prosecutor there in Colleton and Hampton counties. This family, like you mentioned, is a very prominent family here in the Low Country in South Carolina, particularly Colleton and Hampton counties. A member of the Murdaugh family serving as the 14th Circuit Solicitor for almost 100 years, 1920 to 2006. There's a lot of unknown questions, a lot of unknown answers regarding what happened on the night. Last Monday night at this family property. No suspects have been named, no persons of interest at this time. Law enforcement say there's no threat to the public. So there's just a lot of unknown things right now regarding the case. The funeral was last Friday for Paul and Maggie Murdaugh. They've been laid to rest. That's kind of where things stand as of right now. Autopsy results were released last Friday. We got those into our newsroom today, confirming that both victims died from multiple gunshot wounds. But like I said, a lot of questions, a lot of things we don't know at this time. Still searching for answers.
You know what, Riley? Whenever I hear law enforcement officials say, we don't have any answers right now, but you're not at risk out there in the public, my reporter senses go bananas, because that means they know something that I don't know, meaning they know more than likely who they're looking for, or they wouldn't tell us that we were all safe. And I assume you feel the same way.
Yeah, that's kind of the general feeling around, is that whoever was responsible for the acts, is likely known by law enforcement, or they have some sort of an idea who it could be at this point. But like I had mentioned, they haven't released that information to the media or the public at this point, other than saying there's no threat to the public. They do think that this was most likely premeditated. Whoever's responsible, they think, had been planning this for some time.
So Riley, there's a quote that a source gave to the Daily Beast, and there's that picture of the lovely Mallory Beach, who was killed at age 19 when she was thrown from Paul's boat, and that's why he's facing these felony charges. But that quote I want to tell you about really sort of stuck in my craw. It was an anonymous source who told the Daily Beast regarding the Murdaugh family, they are the law around here. Is that causing a lot of rumor and consternation and getting people really wound up with regard to this story, and unnecessarily so or necessarily so?
That's a really good question. I've obviously been working this case for the local affiliate here in Charleston last week.
So I don't want to go any further with that, but you could see how convoluted this is. Now, one of the things is Paul Murdaugh was operating a boat that wound up killing this young lady, Mallory Beach. Now, that an attorney could use that to say, well, obviously the people that shot Paul and his mother, Maggie, it was a revenge killing, this, that, and the other thing. But let's also keep in mind that Alec Murdaugh discovered the bodies. It was reported from the autopsy that they think they died between 9 and 9:30 p.m. Barbara, I'm going to ask you, you've been to 600, 700 murder scenes. And besides, I can't count the amount of autopsies you've been to. Is the science of predicting the exact time of death that accurate?
Not even close. Not even close. Bill, you remember from many homicides we've worked that I'd give you a range of, maybe 2 to 4 hours. I might say sometime between 8 p.m. and midnight. And that's based on liver mortis, rigor mortis, alga mortis, the body temperature, all those things. But each of them in and of themselves just gives you a range, an hour here, 2 hours there, a few hours. You combine them all and you mix them up in the hat and then pick out a number and say 4 hours this way, 4 hours that way, unless common sense pops in. And common sense is somebody saw the shooting at 9 p.m. or somebody heard a series of shots at 9 p.m. But then why say 9 to 9:30 p.m.? That doesn't make sense. If you have a piece of solid evidence that says, I heard gunshots, I heard people screaming, or I saw her at exactly 9 p.m., and then they were found dead at 9:30, that would make sense. But you can't, there is no medical examiner on earth who would say they died between 9 and 9:30 based on a physical examination.
So, Barbara, part B to that question, and that was a brilliantly scientifically stated facts. Part B, if Alec Murdaugh arrives there at 10:07, they're saying, he has an ironclad alibi. That's nonsense, because no one could say exactly the time that Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were shot to death.
That's
so
right.
His ironclad alibi now gets thrown out the window, who's ever saying that. Another thing I want to ask you. So one of the people in the chat said, is it possible that the mother shot and killed Paul, and then Paul shot and killed, or they in a gunfight, OK Corral style, they killed each other?
Ridiculous.
Listen, anything is possible in this world except that. That's crazy. You don't find a mother having a shootout with her son like that. And
also, Barbara, the fact that one of the guns was a shotgun that was used on Paul Murdaugh, and they believe the mother was shot with an AR-15.
That's right. So
two heavy-duty weapons, like who would, first of all, unless there was multiple shooters, who's going to use two different weapons? You know what I'm saying? If it was one shooter, is he going to say, okay, I'm going to kill you with an AR-15 and I'm going to shoot you with a shotgun?
Yeah. I'm very, very interested to find out how the medical examiner or how the coroner made that determination that they died between 9 and 9:30. That's just scientifically, it's nonsense. So there must be some kind of video, somebody heard something, or maybe somebody heard gunshots at 9 p.m. and then someone else heard more gunshots at 9:30. Other than that, it just doesn't fly. And as you said, his alibi means nothing if it's based on that's kind of spurious thinking.
Exactly. Phil, what are your feelings on this?
Well, listen, when you played that clip, I mean, there's so much to unravel here in this case, but to try and stay on track of what you and Barbara were just talking about, I mean, there's some possibilities in my mind as to how they came up with that 9 to 9:30. Obviously, as Barbara stated, maybe it was heard on a Ring doorbell camera shots and stuff like that. Maybe there were 2 volleys of shots, and I'm going to get into that a little bit. Maybe it's possible whoever killed these people may have only killed one, and then when the other person appeared or came home or maybe heard the shots or was led out to that area a second time, oh my God, let's go see who is that? He's on the floor. And then the second volley of shots. So that's a possibility in here. I think there was pretty much a statement by law enforcement that they believe that that's the time frame that they think the murders occurred. And then if you listen to the 911 call when Alec returns home and calls the police, he does sound frantic. If he's involved in it, I think I read somewhere on the internet he was named as a person of interest. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but he does sound frantic. He does sound like someone that just discovered family members shot, but that doesn't mean that he's not involved.
Well, Phil, let me just stop you for a second. They were saying that in the beginning he was a person of interest, and now they're saying that, but he has this ironclad alibi. And I'm saying if that ironclad alibi is based on a 9 to 9:30 time of death for Maggie and Paul, then that's not an ironclad alibi.
Well, listen, an ironclad alibi by who's saying that? His attorneys? Of course they're going to say that. They'll say
the investigators are saying that.
That came from SLED?
Yes.
Okay, so it came from the investigators. Well, maybe there's something, we don't have access to the case folder, so maybe there is something that might be somewhat ironclad. But however, the time frame, they seem pretty certain about that. And again, he did sound like he was frantic at the time when he made the 911 call. And look, we did investigations on many homicide cases. The person that calls the police is usually interviewed and heavily interviewed. What I mean by that is you want to get specific facts. The person can be a little bit upset at the time. You'll go back maybe the next day. You'll get a story out of them the first night, and then you'll get a very thorough statement out of them the next day to either include or exclude them as being a person of interest or a suspect in the murders, obviously. So that's very important. That's standard to interview that person.
Louis, I want to ask you a question. You've seen some of the videos on this. This family is one of the most powerful families in the South. Can this influence the law enforcement responders in them doing their job or not doing their job?
Without question. We all have a boss, right? You were in the NYPD, and I was in the NYPD. And when instruction comes down, you mean to tell me you don't remember a story where some influential person, say on the Upper East Side, got a little preferential treatment versus somebody who knows no one or nothing? These folks have run that town for almost 100 years. To think that they don't have any influence in an investigation or in the way that investigation is conducted for this heir apparent, this Paul Murdaugh, would be naive. I think if you look at, I have just got, I got into this case, Bill, when you asked me to appear here. So I started doing a little homework on the timeline, and you put up the picture before. But, Phil, to echo your words, to say that this thing is beyond, this is like an onion in this case. You keep peeling back layers every time you look. It goes way back. And you say to yourself, gee, there's a lot of people who might have it in for these folks. Because if you've been prosecuted in what county? It's Hampton County.
Hampton County.
Right? So the Solicitor General is the equivalent of a DA, I believe, for 4 or 5 counties down there. So if you've been prosecuted in the last 85 years, chances are you've been prosecuted by a Murdaugh, right? So the number of enemies that these folks had, not necessarily just the parents. Look, everybody immediately says, if it were my daughter, I'd want retribution. But I don't know how true the news reports are. I didn't do that deep of a dive. But there's reports out there that say that Mallory Beach's family voluntarily gave up their DNA. Did you hear that?
Yes. Yeah.
So assuming that clears them, I mean, this thing just keeps going back and back. You know, off the air before we started, Bill, I told you I had a quote from the great Winston Churchill. In 1939, Churchill said, he described something as a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. That's what this case is.
Yeah.
He was using it to describe Russia in 1939. We're using it here to describe this case. Going back to, and I don't know if you're going to get into it, you know, to the murder of 19-year-old Stephen Smith in 2015.
Yeah, we're going to get to that, but I first want to get a little bit to the boating accident, and that's the boat that crashed into a bridge abutment. Paul Murdaugh and probably most of the people on the boat were intoxicated. He was about to go on trial for this case prior, of course, after he was murdered. Which now that, of course, the case is a civil case now. But these are some of the people that were on the boat. The girl on the lower bottom is Mallory Beach, and she was 19 years old, and she was thrown into the water, and her body wasn't found for 5 days. The upper folks are the other 2 girls, and I have the names of the other survivors. Miley Altman and Connor Cook were together. Morgan Doughty was with Paul Murdaugh, and Mallory Beach was with Anthony Cook. So this was a really screwed up night. There was a lot of alcohol. When they went to this, I know it was like an oyster festival or something like that. The ride back in the pitch dark was an hour. They would have been probably better served of taking an Uber home and leaving the damn boat. But so anyway, what happened was this 19-year-old girl, Mallory Beach, was killed. And that's why people in that area are saying that this was a revenge killing over this boating accident. Phil, your feelings on this?
Of course, 100%. That's the first thing that would jump out at me as an investigator investigating this homicide. The first thing I'd say was, there's somebody that wanted to hurt Paul or his mom, and that would come up right away. So naturally, you're going to talk to those people and you're going to look into that. You're going to go down that avenue to see if it leads to anything more fruitful regarding evidence or possibly naming somebody as a perpetrator. But as Lou stated, they gave up their DNA pretty quickly. It seemed like they were cooperative. And I mean, I don't know where it's going to go, but staying with the boating accident, I mean, there's video of Paul buying alcohol. There's video of them getting out of the boat after they're on the way back. I mean, like you said, they stood at a festival. They drank for 4 hours. They were going to consider taking an Uber and leave the boat there, come back the next day, but he insisted on driving back. So when they drove back halfway there, or whatever it was, an hour ride, they stopped and they went into a bar and they did shots. There's actual video of that. They were doing shots. And right before the crash into that bridge abutment, there was an argument between Paul and his girlfriend, where he slowed the boat down. He went to the front of the boat. He actually spat on her, cursed at her, and he went back to the controls of the boat, and he gunned the boat, and that's when the accident happened. Now, the boat hit I guess he must have tried to turn. You saw, if you have the picture of the boat, Bill, you could put that up a second. It looks like he must have tried to turn to avoid the impact, and it hit the side of the boat, and then the boat shot forward to it was a kind of a narrow area they were passing where the bridge is, and the boat landed against that's the picture where it landed against the side of the canal there. So she was thrown into the water. They called out for her. They didn't hear her return from any of the screaming that they did or calling out, and she apparently drowned. Was found 4 or 5 days later. There was a 40-minute lag before any law enforcement or EMS could get to them, because there's another bridge in the area. And the kid who was making the calls, I believe it was Connor Cook, suffered a broken jaw, so he had a little bit of trouble talking. But I did hear the 911 tape on that, and there was confusion. So it took them 40 minutes. I don't know if they 3 of them, I think, were flung into the water. I know Paul, Anthony, I believe, and the young lady, what's her name? Mallory, to the water. But they got back. The other 2 got back to the boat. The young lady never got back to the boat. And so all of that occurred. And there was actually interviews that I saw on the internet from, I believe it was Morgan Doherty. There was an interview of her that I saw. And she said that before the police actually got to them, Anthony and Paul almost got into a fight because he was like smirking about it. Yeah, that's the interview that I'm citing. So he showed no emotion about her being missing, according to this young lady. There was a conversation about whether or not Paul was able to get them back because of his intoxication, and he didn't know the area as well as Anthony, I believe, and they wanted Anthony. It was either Anthony Cook or Connor Cook, one of them, to drive back. So there was discussions. There was almost an argument after the crash, and then the police got there, and she stated that Morgan stated that just before the police got there, that they were almost going to a fisticuffs between Paul and I think it was Anthony. So there was stuff going on. Till they were rescued, till they were.
Phil, let me just stop you for a second. One of the things that, again, when we talk about maybe there was favoritism in law enforcement, he wasn't arrested that night. And allegedly his blood alcohol level was 3 times the level it should have been. So if it's 0.08 in New York is, I think, driving while impaired.
Well, Bill, let me ask you a question. If his last name wasn't Murdaugh, what do you think the case would have been?
Louis, it's actually Murdaugh, like
Murdaugh.
It's almost like Murdoch, like
Murdaugh.
It's pronounced. Yeah.
I know.
I mean,
he would have been in jail. He probably would have had very high bail, and he might be alive today. That's probably the answer to that. But we don't know if that would be the case or not, because his name was Murdaugh, and it is what it is,
Well, Louis, another thing I wanted to mention was one of his attorneys tried to blame the accident on one of the cooks that said that he was driving the boat, the guy who broke his jaw. And he actually tried to, get the charges dropped and have him arrested for it. So you could see there's some real nasty stuff going on in this case.
Bill, I'm glad you brought that up, because I have it right here. On July 7, 2021, new court documents were filed regarding the lawsuit from the boating incident, which alleged conspiracy connecting law enforcement to the Murdaugh family. Now, that was done by Mallory's family. Based on what you just spoke about, there was some talk about, well, he might not have been at the controls, meaning Paul, and somebody else was driving the boat. They tried to take the onus off of Paul and put it onto one of the other passengers. I believe it was Anthony. And by doing that, they now, the Mallory's family, fighting alleged conspiracy connecting law enforcement to the Murdaugh family. So I guess the attorneys that were representing Mallory's family acted on what they were trying to do by pointing the finger at someone other than Paul.
I think it was actually Connor who they tried to say was driving the boat. Okay. And because he had grabbed the steering wheel on the previous bridge, that he almost crashed into the abutment on that and saved the boat from crashing. So maybe the lawyers thought, oh, he was driving at that point. Why don't we just say he was, which is some dirty stuff going on. Blue, you want to comment on this stuff?
Well, listen, Shakespeare once said, what do you call 200,000 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean?
A blessing.
A good start. No, but seriously, look, defense attorneys tend to be aggressive in their tactics, some more than others. Some are willing to bend the truth if it fits their client's needs. In this case, in light of who this kid was and in light of where he was going to be prosecuted, he was going to be prosecuted in the very court where he and his family ran the show for almost 100 years. Now, didn't it ever occur to anybody that immediately the venue should have been moved right from the start? But no. Here, to piggyback on your understanding that he wasn't even arrested that night, you talk about a spoliation of evidence. What's his blood alcohol content going to go? It's going to drop every hour, right? And so you're going to get, and then you get to the point where, you have attorneys trying to, muddy the waters. My understanding, if the reports are true, is that a grand jury was convened to look into this very thing, whether or not there was going to be an obstruction charge in this case. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I was.
So, you look at that, and now, the Attorney General is taking this case.
Lou, do you know, I don't mean to interrupt, but do you know when that grand jury convened? Because I have that the solicitor, which is the district attorney, the 14th Circuit solicitor, on August 11th recused himself. So was that grand jury investigation before that, which may have caused him to recuse himself? Do you know that, Lou, or you don't know?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So yeah, and it went from the 14th Circuit solicitor, he recused, and it went to the Attorney General's office, which it should have been that from day one, like you said, Lou, 100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, getting back to the original point of whether or not, who you are and where you are matter in a case, absolutely. You're talking about a kid who, they describe his family as a legal dynasty in that state. You're talking about a firm that produced the Solicitors General for probably 3 or 4 generations. So going back to that young lady's quote that they are the law around here, I don't think it's so far off base.
100%. We're going to take a very quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the 2015 potential homicide of Stephen Smith, and then we're going to also talk about Alec Murdaugh and on September 4th when he was allegedly shot in the head 7 miles from there where the homicide occurred. And there's some real doozies with that one, too. Before I go to it, I just want to thank Mandy Matney of Fitz News, who did an unbelievable investigative report on this case. And when you look for real accurate information, don't look to the national news. Look to Mandy Matney, who is from Hilton Head, South Carolina. So she's a native there. There's also another guy, a podcaster named Eric Allen, who did an unbelievable job. And the information they put out there, it's professional as all hell. Well, Mandy is a pro, but Eric Allen's a young guy, but his podcast and his video was incredible. So we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the Stephen Smith case and a few other things. But before that, if you please subscribe to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, and we're going to go to a quick commercial now and be back in a second. Phil, you want to do the first one?
Sure. Joe Murray, attorney at law. Joe's getting better by the day. We hope him speedy recovery for Joe, who was suffering from COVID, but thank God he's home now doing better. Have you found yourself in a jam? Are you in need of legal counsel in the New York area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced trial attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. He knows both sides of the fence. His website is jmurray-law.com. That's jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702, 1702, or you could email Joe at joe@jmurray-law.com. That's joe@jmurray-law.com.
You know, Joe is in the chat tonight. We're so happy because he had a really bad, nasty bout of COVID. He was in the hospital, and he's actually in the chat. So we're so thrilled. It looks like he's going to be okay. Outstanding, great guy. Police Coffee is an officer-owned business dedicated to crafting the finest coffees and blends, and it will provide you with the freshest coffee available. Each batch is roasted fresh by people who know what it means to stay vigilant. And our specialty coffees do not waste one drop when flavor is concerned. Our coffee is some of the best you'll find, but it also helps serve an important cause, giving back to our community. 50% of our profits goes towards helping family members of police officers who fell in the line of duty. To order coffee and related products from policecoffee.com, go to the website. There are over 7 types of coffee to choose from. And again, 50% of the profits go to officers' families in need. For a 10% discount, use OTC10, that's off the cuff 10. And again, the website is policecoffee.com. Barbara, I specifically wanted to talk to you about this. And I think you know about the case of Stephen Smith. And here's a picture of him on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in 2015, it's alleged that he was hit by a car. It was a hit and run. And as a result of that, his body wound up in the middle of the road. He had some injuries that weren't consistent with a hit and run. You want to speak upon that, Barbara?
Sure. Normally, well, first, what was he doing in the middle of the road? It sounds like it.
Well, his car ran out of gas, but there was no way he would be walking in the middle of the road.
Right. So if you're hit by a car, there's injuries low down, around the where the bumper might hit you about mid shin, and it depends on the car, of course. And you can actually measure this and make sure it's consistent with the car you suspect. But there are usually the hit to the shins, to the upper thighs, with the front of the car. The person's thrown up onto the hood of the car, and then the head is hit by the windshield. That's how you get your big head injuries. And then as the car stops, the body goes rolling forward as it's thrown off the car and winds up somewhere on the side of the road. I don't think I've ever seen somebody land flat in the middle of the road, but I guess it depends on where they were standing when originally hit. But just to have one long laceration across the side of his head, it doesn't make sense with being hit by a car. And as you mentioned, there was some theory that he might have been hit by the mirror of a truck. Why would he then be in the middle of the road near the yellow lines? It's just not consistent. I would have to see that recreated. And, there are people that reconstruct accidents beautifully and can work the physics down to a few inches of where the person should have landed. And, there's also the laceration itself. If it was from a truck mirror, it should have a pattern to it. With a front knob, this 2 angled metal pieces that come forward with a knob joining them that holds the base of the mirror so that it can turn. You should see something consistent with that, a pattern.
And Barbara, wouldn't there also be broken glass on the scene or some artifacts of the vehicle that hit him?
Yeah, I guess if you're hit by a mirror, that mirror would probably, if it's hard enough to kill a person, that mirror would probably be broken. Probably.
Yeah.
Bill, I responded to maybe a couple of dozen motor vehicle accidents where a person was hit by a car and either was seriously injured or killed. And you made a great point. There's usually some debris from the impact, broken glass, pieces of molding. Sometimes there's actual chips of paint come off the car. None of that was found in this case, first off. We know that for a fact. Now, when you put up the photo of where the body is found, it's like in the middle of the road. Now, they said they found his car the next day. The gas cap was out of the car. He allegedly ran out of gas and was walking along the road either to go home or to try and get help or to get gas, whatever it may be. But if now the original medical investigator that responded to the scene, along with the highway patrol, said that they believed that it was a homicide investigation. They didn't think it was a motor vehicle accident or motor vehicle pedestrian homicide, not homicide, accident. So they initially called the State Law Enforcement Division, which is the SLED, SLED. The subsequent investigation to that, when it went to the medical examiner's office and there was an autopsy done, that's where the autopsy was concluded that he was probably hit in the head by the mirror of a truck. Now, like Barbara Butcher just stated, when you get hit, if it's a car, you're going to sustain injuries low. And if he was hit high, which it hit him in the head, allegedly, he had that big gash on the right side of his forehead, that would mean maybe it was a truck. But again, like she said, there was no pattern, there was no pieces of glass or anything like that. And they did say that there was a shirt that was recovered, a piece of his clothing, and it had very minuscule fragments of blue fiberglass, and they indicated that maybe someone in the Murdaugh family had a blue all-terrain vehicle, an ATV. So I don't know how that plays into it, but it just looks like the initial investigation, they concluded, I mean, Highway's out there doing these investigations on a daily basis, okay? They concluded right away this is not a motor vehicle accident. This is a homicide. They sent it to the State Law Enforcement Division investigators, and then the subsequent autopsy, they concluded that it was a motor vehicle accident, and the case was basically closed. However, once they started to investigate the double homicide, which occurred this June, information was garnered somewhere in that investigation that this was a homicide investigation. It was reopened as such. I believe the date on it was, let's see, July. Where do I have it here? Trying to find it here. It was sometime after the June homicide, the double homicide, they decided that it was going to be, June 7th was when the homicide was. And on the 22nd, that's when they decided to open an investigation on Stephen Smith's death from 2015. And they,
but Phil, let me just bring something else to light. Apparently, while investigating the double murder of Paul and his mom, Maggie, they found some real pertinent evidence in the 2015 case of Stephen Smith.
right.
So it's like, whoa, I mean, that is like something that doesn't happen. And how did they know right away? This is 6 years ago, this murder, that this evidence here is connected to Stephen Smith. Louis, I could see your brain is going on fire. What do you got?
Well, Bill, what I was going to say is, it's remarkable because unless it's news to me that SLED has a dedicated cold case squad like we do in New York City, right? So, look, you were a homicide investigator. A 2015 case is a cold case. And unless something of significance is brought to bear, there's no reason to reopen that case. So,
they never, it was never ruled a homicide.
It was ruled a hit and run back in 2015.
Right.
They only made it a homicide 2 weeks after. I just got the dates. June 7th was the murder, the double homicide. June 22nd is when they now opened an investigation into the homicide. So it really is, you're right, Lou, it's cold because it's back then, but it's not really, the homicide investigation started on the 22nd of June, which was 2 weeks after the murder. And I just wanted to say one other thing about the murder, because I kind of draft over it before. When the police came out and made a statement that they didn't think that there was any danger to the public at large, that says a lot to me. That tells me that they felt that they had a motive of why they were targeted. It sounded like these people were targeted. It didn't seem like it was a random thing. And so they put out that statement. I think that's very important and very telling.
I also want to say that the mother of Stephen Smith never, ever believed that this was a hit and run on her son.
Absolutely.
And always felt that the Murdaugh family was somehow involved in this. And the son, the younger son, Buster, he went to the same high school as Stephen Smith. There's an allegations that they may have had some kind of relationship. I don't know that in fact is true. I'm just repeating the allegations that I've heard. None of it is confirmed. In fact, Alec, the father, was the coach of their sports team that they played on together. So all these parts come back, and they all seem interconnected in some way. It's just unbelievable.
Hey, I have a question for Phil. Do you know whether or not, in one of the reports, it said that the FBI at the time, now I don't know if it was at the time or, it would have had to be at the time, at some point, the FBI in the Stephen Smith case offered to do a rape kit.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
So, and I had said to Bill off the air, how do we go from a hit and run to a rape kit?
Somebody suspected something, and I'm sure it came to light in the beginning because the mother, she said, no, there's no way that my son would be walking on a road in the middle of the road at that time of night. It's dark. And he was supposedly a very careful kid. He was very conscious of his surroundings. Apparently he had some run-ins with people, bothering him or whatever it was, but she categorized him as someone who would not be walking down a road like that in such a dangerous way. I mean, if you're walking down a dark road at night, obviously you got to take note of what's, the passing cars and stuff like that. She suspected foul play right at the beginning. And she also said there was rumor and innuendo that the Murdaugh boys were responsible for her son's death. And that's where the rumor came that he may have had, supposedly he confided in another friend that he had some type of a fling with a well-connected member of the community, a family member of the well-connected. They didn't say Murdaugh, but they said someone, a well-connected family in the community that he had a fling with. He spoke about it, didn't name anybody. So that's where I think the jump went to, possibly the brother who went to school with him and stuff like that. So listen, this is a legal dynasty. They've been categorized as that. That's quite obvious. 100 years with the law firm, 85 years as the district attorney, the solicitor, 14th Circuit solicitor. Influence and corruption is obviously right there. I mean, you like Lou said early on, you'd have to be, brain dead to think that it's not possible that there's preferential treatment being given for these people living in that town. I mean,
Phil, I just wanted, before we get to where Alec Murdaugh was shot on the side of the road, I want to mention
a lot to say about that.
Well, I want to mention a housekeeper named Gloria Satterfield,
right,
that wound up dead in their house when she fell down the stairs, and that's what was reported.
That's a year before, right? That's in 2018.
That happened in 2018, and the Murdaugh's insurance company paid $500,000 to her family in a wrongful death suit. So now what?
Bill, I got to make one other point about Stephen Smith case. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think it's very important. Within days after he was killed, Randy Murdaugh, who worked at the firm, which is Alec's brother, reached out to her and offered his legal services pro bono to her. So, I mean, again, that's another component. There's another piece of a puzzle. This guy gets killed, allegedly, in a hit and run, and the law firm that the family's connected to, the brother, calls her and says, we're going to represent you. So there's so many things, so many red flags, so to speak, going on with this whole case. And again, now that lady that was found, she fell, that was 2018. She fell in, was it in Alec's house or the brother's house, Bill? Do we know? Did we ever find out?
I think it was the brother's house.
It was the brother's house. And $500,000 was paid out to her family.
Their insurance company in a wrongful death suit.
Okay. So again,
Louis, comments?
Well, I mean, it's a wrongful death suit. Does that happen routinely? 500,000 sounds like a lot, though. Typically what they'll do is, they'll bring a wrongful death act. But then again, if she fell down the stairs, how do you prove fault, right? Typically, insurance carriers don't like to pay out. They certainly don't pay out big sums easily, not without, at the very least, there would have had to been discovery and depositions and so forth, right? So I don't know what the level of litigation was, but, I didn't read that there was anything. I
Well,
mean,
what would the liability? Where would you, if you're an attorney on that case, if you got presented with that case, where would the liability be if she fell down a flight of stairs? I mean,
if I were defending the case, I would say, well, prove to me that she didn't trip over her own feet, or prove to me that she didn't miss her medication that day, or prove to me that she was wearing the wrong shoes. If I were bringing the case, I'd say, well, they created a dangerous condition. They knew that staircase was shiny wood, and if you walk with socks, you're going to go flying, and people had fallen there before, and so on. But the point is, before a carrier takes out $500,000 and gives it to a claimant, there's usually some type of litigation, if not a full-blown trial. Here, I'm not sure what we had. I don't know if we had any testimony, but clearly, if there was testimony, there would be transcripts of it and such. So,
guys, I want to get to Alec, because we only have about 15 minutes left, and this is going to take all this time and more. He resigns from the law firm, and he entered rehab after a long battle has been exacerbated, he says, by these murders. This is the scene of where he allegedly was shot at multiple times because he was fixing a flat tire, but he had his tires on his car were the kind that can't go flat, that you can drive on them for 50 miles after they're flat. Also on the scene, a knife was found that matched a slash wound on the tire that alleged the knife belonged to Alec Murdaugh. Some way during this whole thing, someone puts him in a car and takes him away, and then miraculously a helicopter shows up out of nowhere, picks him up on the road somewhere, and takes him to a hospital, not in South Carolina, but in Georgia. Some of the law enforcement people that responded said he had either no wound or very much a superficial wound. And then when he got to the hospital, no one gets driven to a hospital in a helicopter with a superficial alleged gunshot wound.
Preferential treatment.
I think this was actually a private helicopter. So someone in the family
he was medevaced, you're saying, essentially, to a hospital.
Yes, but I think it was a private helicopter company.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a law enforcement helicopter. No. What I read, it sounded like somebody sent it there. Go get the guy,
Well, they say membership has its privileges.
Yes.
Barbara,
Bill,
let's
like
comment.
A few words about.
Let me just get Barbara on to talk about the gunshot wound.
Go ahead,
Barbara.
Yeah, I understand it was apparently there was an entrance and an exit, and reportedly a skull fracture and reportedly some bleeding in the brain. But he was out of the hospital in less than 2 days and went right into a rehab. That's, you can get a minor skull fracture, like just a linear without any fragmentation, and be sent home. But to have brain bleeding and be sent home, that doesn't sound so good. So a lot of that came from his attorney, who said, that's the findings of the hospital, and he was very badly injured, but they sent him home in 2 days and let him go to rehab. That doesn't play too well. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, I don't think so. And according to law enforcement personnel that responded to the scene, they almost didn't see an injury at all.
Right.
And then all of a sudden his attorney say, "Oh, there was an in and out. There was a this. There was a that." But yet law enforcement saw a very minor wound or a superficial wound at best.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden a chopper comes out of the sky like Black Hawk Down, comes to pick this guy up.
Talk about privilege, right?
What about the timing of the shooting?
Yeah.
He allegedly gets shot right after he gets suspended from practicing law for embezzling money.
The next day, the very next day.
To use a really strong legal term, what's up with that?
Yeah. Well, listen, going back to the whole flat tire thing, that specific car, I have the same tires on my own car, but that car has an SOS button in it. It's a Mercedes. I think it's a GLE. It's an SUV, a Mercedes SUV. So it has an SOS button, 24-hour roadside repair, and it has the run flat tires, which I've experienced 3 flats with them myself. You can I rode almost 50 miles. Recently, I was on a turnpike when the tire went down. It must have been a slow leak or whatever. And I rode for 3 more exits and got home and changed the flat when I got home. So there was no need for him to pull over right away and change that tire. That sounds like a load of bull. And then they did, like Bill said, they recovered a pocket knife, which it was consistent with the, he must have stabbed the sidewall of the tire, and the knife was consistent with that puncture on the tire. So, I mean, it's screaming, you know, staged crime scene, a staged self-inflicted gunshot wound. But I mean, we don't know. We don't have the case folder in front of us, and we didn't speak to him. A lot of the things that he said might also lead to what I'm alleging now, that it was a staged, you know, flat tire and a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It may not be. We don't know, but those are the questions I'd be asking for sure, for certain.
On the screen are his 2 brothers, who came out right after this and said that, yes, he's been stealing money from the law firm, and not 1 million, but millions of dollars he's been stealing from the law firm. And in fact, there is also a report that his wife, Maggie, hired a forensic accountant to go over the books of the law firm because maybe she's involved in some way with the law firm, that she felt that he had been embezzling money. So he also he checked himself into a hospital for opioid addiction. You know, that's always the convenient way out, Louis. As you know, the lawyers and law enforcement can't touch you when you're in drug rehab.
Yes, it's the best advice a lawyer could give if he doesn't want his or her client to speak to law enforcement. Once you go into the hospital, you know, we all enjoy HIPAA, right? Health Insurance Patient Privacy Act. Nobody can talk to you. Look, I mean, the old union delegates used to tell you, hey, kid, if you get into a shooting, you got trauma, go right to the hospital right away. Don't talk to anybody.
That's right.
Right?
That's for sure.
100%.
I even heard they would send guys to the farm sometimes too. If you got to go to the farm, you have serious problems. Go to the farm. You know?
Well, it's interesting, but people might not know what the farm is, right? Like,
right,
I mean, if you weren't on the job in New York City, Billy, what's the farm?
That's where you go for alcohol abuse, and it's not a farm. There's no animals there. There's no farmers, but it's upstate. It's it's alcohol rehab, so they call it the farm. Rehab, right.
Leave it to cops to come up with a name like the farm.
There's another part of that you guys didn't mention. They put you in the bow and arrow squad. They take your guns away. They take your gun and shield away, and then you go up to the farm and you go rehab and everything. But Bill, I want to make a point about one thing. You said the wife hired a forensic accountant. That could also be her looking into the finances. Maybe she was going to divorce him. So that also brings motive into it. Maybe he wanted to offer or something like that. So I think all of those things have to be looked at.
Phil, the next thing, Meredith McKenzie, thank you so much for the 1999 super chat. And she wrote, I doubt he knew how to change a tire. You're right. He probably didn't. I think we all forget how to do it after a while. You just call AAA or something like that, right? We all forget.
Guys have roadside assistance these days.
Right. We all forget how to change a damn tire.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he was the next thing, of course, we're waiting to hear is that he had a gumar, right?
The gumara, the old
gumara. You Italians.
2 elements. While we have drugs, we're missing something with money, which they said he was stealing, and now the gumara, and then we got a perfect soap opera. Everything's there, all the components.
Well, a gumara is a mistress, right?
That's right, a mistress. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't pronounce it right because I'm not Italian. But anyway, I want everyone to know, though, that we're not making light of this. These are real people that were murdered, and there's 5 dead people involved in this caper here. Going back to the house cleaning, Gloria, and of course Mallory Beach, a 19-year-old beautiful girl that lost her life based on just drunkenness and alcohol negligence. Stephen Smith, that appears also to be a homicide. And it's, of course, the mother, Maggie, and Paul, and it's just a mess. It's a real mess now. And it's going to keep some attorneys busy for lots of years, but all the elements are there. There's money, there's corruption, there's all of these things that when you talk about, even people in this chat talk about how powerful the Murdaugh family is in this part of South Carolina. And Louis, you made a point before, this happens in New York City too. People that have money and connections, they can get things done or silence things or get favors done that, doesn't come to the light. Or, you may even get a big boss, as you said, on the NYPD telling you to do something. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute, And then if you challenge that, you're going to wind up walking a footpost on Victory Boulevard in Staten Island, right?
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
So,
well, I had a chief call me one time on it was like an assault case or something. And he was kind of, in the corner of one of the people on the assault. It was like a cross complaint. And I come to find out that the guy, he faked his tax returns to get this apartment. He was all a con artist. He was a professional rent dodger. So I called the chief up. I said, listen, do a little homework on your guy here. This guy, it's not going his way and he's a bad guy. And thank God everything, went the right way. I helped out the people that he was trying to scam. So there's 100% that you get influenced by people in high places. 100%.
Jessica Shades, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. All you folks in the green font, you're members of the Police Off the Cuff YouTube channel. You're channel members. Thank you so much for doing that. This stuff, believe it or not, costs money to produce this show, and we so appreciate your support. Jennifer M., she asks, do you think it's possible that Papa Alec could have killed them to cover up the money laundering or theft and the boating accident, used two guns to make look like more than one person, or to shut them up? I think anything's possible. If any of us here have learned anything in law enforcement, is that never to say never. Because, as they say, truth is stranger than fiction. And reality, you couldn't write. If you were a writer and wrote this story, people would say, come on, you got to be kidding me. There's too many moving parts here.
Yeah.
But look, guess what? This is truth, and it is happening,
There may be more stuff to be uncovered that we're not privy to, I mean, look, they went into that double homicide investigation and they uncovered that this 2015 hit and run is now a murder investigation. So who knows what's to follow? And we're going to stay plugged in on this, I'm sure.
100%. Sunshine M. Morgan, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Vivian P., thank you for the $4.99. Tom Cusinelli. Wow, I got to talk about money more often. The floodgates have opened, Thank you so much. We're at almost the hour point, and I promised Barbara, I think Barbara has plans. She's the only one on this panel with a life. Although Lou LaPietri, he has a money counting machine, and he's got to oil it. He's got to put some 3-in-1 oil in it after the show because he's an attorney and he's making big coin. Joe Murray,
Barbara, I don't know if
see
you're
you
going out, but I'm seeing some flashes by your window. I think there's a little thunderstorm passing.
Yes.
Joe Murray, thank you so much for all you do for us. I'm so happy that you appear to be better. You're in the chat. You're alive. And I knew you were a big, strong Irish guy that was going to beat this COVID thing. And we look forward to having you back on the show. And
Joe, I miss you. Come on back.
That's right. We all, so many people love Joe Murray. I mean,
He's
you
a great
can't believe
great guy.
how many people in the chat and how many people that are members, they're like, well, how's Joe Murray doing? Everyone's praying for him. And I guess
we had a lot of people praying for him, Bill. I believe in the power of prayer, and he's doing good. Thank God for that.
I think prayer actually works, and it worked for Joe Murray. Barbara, I'm going to give you a couple of last words.
Don't you wish that they had done a swab on the guy's hand for gunshot residue after he was allegedly shot by a stranger while changing a tire? Wouldn't that be
something, Barbara? 100%. 100%. You're right.
We discussed that. Yes, 100%.
That would be wonderful to figure that out. And I've seen it. I've seen it, a person that shot themselves, but they jerked the hand at the last minute. You get a graze wound and a relatively simple skull fracture, just a linear, non-displaced, non-fragmented fracture from the explosive force of the, the percussion of the gun. And, it's not a very deadly wound. doesn't particularly hurt very much either. But we don't know what was seen at that hospital, and I'd love to see that report.
Unbelievable, right? I mean, a lot of covering up in this case. Lou, talking about covering up, Lou LaPietro, you want to talk to us about that?
Well,
Last words.
last words on the night of the double murder, when Alec calls and he's distraught. Did he go back to the squad and get debriefed for about 10 hours, or was he let go?
No, he was let go.
Enough said.
Yeah.
There you go.
Who does that?
Nobody does that. You're right. But, you know, again, he's probably protected by, he's an attorney himself, and he can just say, I'm done talking, right?
But that's fine. But with him, it sounds like he didn't have to do that. Oh, we'll call you tomorrow. Well, just like they didn't arrest his son for on the night of the crime either, right?
No,
Right.
they didn't, which is unbelievable, right?
So
Just incredible. But I don't know what happened to Phil. I don't know if he didn't pay the bill for his Wi-Fi this month, or what happened, or they shut Brooklyn down of Wi-Fi. You know, I don't know what happened. Folks, anyway, this is our coverage tonight of this Murdaugh case in South Carolina. It's tremendously interesting. We're going to stay with this. We're going to do a couple more shows on this. You know, we also have some merchandise. We got our producer, Joshua, and he has Phil's calling me, but I can't really answer the phone right now, Phil. But we have some merchandise, and if you go on our website, you can buy our merchandise. We got some pretty cool stuff. Police off the cuff mugs with dipped in butter on the other side. We have Polish My Rack shirts, which a lot of you women said you'd only wear that to bed and nowhere else. That's okay. You can wear it to bed. And listen, again, I want to thank everyone for all their support. And Barbara, great to have you on the show as always. You're looking fantastic. And Lou LaPietra, I hope I never need to hire you, but you're a great attorney and a great friend. Thank you so much.
Great.
And everyone listening tonight, thank you so much. And we'll see you real soon.
good night.
Good night, all.